Hey everyone, it's Monday morning. Just got into the office. The plan is just work on this monorail system a bit more, implement this properly, get the monorail cars to stop and start in the right place, and then the next step is to implement monorail stations so the player and NPCs can jump on and off the monorail. So I'm going to get started now. I'm going to start the stream up and I'll report back when I've made a little bit of progress. Alright, so I've been working on this problem all morning now, trying to queue up cars at monorail stations, and I've landed on something which looks quite good. It's got some promise. So you've got this hard-coded monorail station here, which is this white circle, and the monorail path, which is this white path here. 3 monorail cars travelling on the path, and they're all queued up, waiting for passengers. You've got the state, which is it's travelling on the monorail, and it's colliding. Colliding means it's colliding with something in front, so that's how it knows to stop moving so it doesn't crash. Obviously this one's not colliding because there's nothing in front of it. And the way I've got this set up is it's really just a demo. Press spacebar, it pretends that someone's jumped on the monorail, and then the car will head off, go back to its travelling state to the next station, and the next one will come in to receive its passenger. So it's basically, it's the bare bones implementation, but it's all I really wanted to do. The next step is to be able to put these monorail stations into the rooms, into the levels using the level editor. So I'm going to work on that for the rest of the day, and I'll come back and let you know how I did. So it's the end of the day. I've made some progress on the monorail stations, but I think what this afternoon's taught me is that I've kind of gone about the problem backwards, and I probably should have implemented the stations first rather than the paths. And I'll show you what I mean. So the idea was that this is the path, and if I want to add a station to it, I click this plus button, and then there's 2 stations. Morley's monorail station or Monty's monorail station, and then you drag this value and this white dot appears where you want the station to be on the monorail. So if I want it to be there, I would leave it there. Now the problem is, in the future, if I want to extend this monorail and change it, you see that the way that I've got this set up for the curve mathematically means that the station moves whenever I alter these points, which is not ideal because these are just markers, and in the real game there'll be a whole bunch of artwork that is the monorail station. The markers are they just tell the game logically that this is a station, and the artwork sits behind it. So I don't want to constantly be having to readjust this value here to move it back on top of the artwork that ends up being the monorail station. So I think I'm going to approach this differently. It's the end of the day now, so I'll have to approach this differently tomorrow. But my plan now is to be able to add a trigger, which is the monorail station, and then connect the paths to the station like that. Now this changes what I worked on this morning because the cars don't assume that the station is in between 2 paths. They assume that the station is in the middle of a path. So it means, unfortunately, I'm going to have to redo that work that I did this morning. But sometimes that's the way it goes, Sometimes you have to spend a day working something out before you land on the right design. And that's what today was. So I'm going to go home, I'm going to chill out tonight, and then come back with a fresh head tomorrow and do this whole thing again. Alright, so it's the next day now. It's 9:15 on Tuesday, which is great. I'm in early. I thought I'd be in late every day because my car was in the garage, but it got fixed early, which is awesome. Today, I'm going to go about re-implementing monorail stations. I tried yesterday and I just wasn't happy with how it turned out. Anyway, I'm much more confident about the plan that I've got today. The first thing I'm going to do is work on these triggers. What I want to do is lay out a trigger and turn this into the monorail station, and currently there's no way to distinguish triggers between other triggers in the editor. All triggers were initially designed to do was fire events. So that's the first thing I'm going to work on this morning. Coming up with a way, probably a combo box here which you can select what type of trigger it is. As ever, I'll report back and I'll let you know how I got on. So it's early afternoon and I've just finished re-implementing Monorail stations into the editor, and it's much more intuitive now, much more easy for me to deal with. I'll give you a little quick demo. We've got two paths, same paths as before, and what you would do now is you would create a trigger and you'd stick it wherever you wanted the monorail station to be. Now I've added this combo box here and you can pick what kind of trigger it is. So normal just means default trigger that just fires events, and what you would do is you would select monorail station. You would select which monorail station you want it to be, Morley's monorail station, and then you would get this cool little monorail icon there to show it was a monorail station, and then go to paths mode, and as long as you've got an entry and exit path that intersect with this trigger, the system knows that this is a monorail station and it connects these two monorail paths. So I think it's a much better system than I had before. It means that I can mess around with these splines all I want, and the monorail station won't ever move, which means that when I actually draw art for monorail stations, I won't have to keep placing the monorail station back over the artwork. Because before, if you remember, every time I moved these points, the logical place for the monorail station was moving. Now it just stays fixed where it is, so it's much, much better. And now I've got to get on with re-implementing how cars move across the monorail now. So that's going to be my job for the afternoon. There's only a couple of hours left of the day, so I'm not going to get it finished, but if I can get these monorails loaded into the game and then get a car moving along a path, that'll be a good end to the day. So we want probably, let's say, I want to draw the monorail splines behind. Okay, so it's the end of the day. I've got this monorail path and monorail station that we did in the editor earlier. I've got them into the game and you can see now we have the monorail station there as the white circle, except it's fixed now, which is great. And I've got a car traveling along the monorail. And right now it just loops back to the monorail station that it started from. But it's the end of the day, so I'm going to have to stop. But tomorrow when I come in, the plan is to re-implement back what I had before, which was cars queuing up at the monorail stations. And then I press spacebar and it pretends that the player's jumped on a monorail and the car will go on its way. That's going to have to wait for tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday morning, 9:15. Just got in. The last coding day of the week for me because kids break up from school for Easter tomorrow. So go and pick up my kid early from school and hang out. But today, the plan is to continue with the monorail system, going to work on monorail cars again today. I'm going to try and re-implement what I had earlier in the week because I've changed now how it all works. I need to look over that code and get it working again with the new system. That's the plan. So I'll report back as always in a couple of hours and I'll let you know how much progress I've made. Okay, so it's early afternoon and I spent all morning re-implementing these cars. Now they work pretty much the same as they did before, except they know that the monorail stations are in between two paths, and you see that they wait for each other so they don't crash into each other. So when one comes into the monorail station, the other one will queue it behind it and then queue it behind that and so on. I also put in two monorail stations now. The idea is that the player will be able to go up to each one and catch a monorail car, and then the monorail car will take over the camera and you'll slowly travel through the game world. So that's what I'm going to work on this afternoon, trying to catch the monorail cars. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work this. I need to do some tricky things with the camera when we transition rooms because each room is centered around 0, 0. And if I want to flow the camera nicely in between each room, I need to do a little bit of maths to work out how that's going to work, rather than have to stop the camera and then restart the camera. Currently, when you walk into the next room, the camera stops and then it restarts. It's quite subtle, but I don't want that to happen really. I just want the monorail cars to be able to travel straight through the room without the camera stopping. That's my task for this afternoon, and I'll report back at the end of the day and I'll let you know how it went. So I thought I'd show you how I get the cars to move in code. Each car has this t value, and this t value is the distance along the curve. So 0 being at the start of the curve and 1 being right at the end of the curve. And this t value is affected by speed, and the speed is affected by either acceleration or deceleration. Now the car can change its speed on 2 states. Whether it's approaching a station, we want it to slow down, or whether it's colliding, we also want it to slow down. The rest of these states, we want it to speed up to a maximum speed. So if we jump into the code where the speed's being calculated, we see we have these 2 checks here in the default case. The first check is whether we're colliding with something in front. In that case, we need to add the deceleration onto the speed, multiplied by the time step, and then we clamp the speed between 0 and 4, 0 being important because we don't want the car to start traveling backwards, and then we increase the car's t value by the speed multiplied by another time step. This second time step takes into account the length of the curve to keep a constant speed no matter how long the curve is. So this will move the t value dependent on the speed, and because it's colliding, it will be slowing down because we're adding this deceleration. If we're approaching the station, it's exactly the same, except we want to clamp to 0.5 in the lowest case because we want the cars to crawl to the station until they get to exactly to the station. And then the default case is we want to accelerate the cars and then clamp between 0 and the maximum speed, which is 4. And that gets the cars to move around the track. So I don't actually give the cars a direction at all. It's just all dependent on this t. 0 at the start of the curve, 1 at the end of the curve. And then if we go to the section of the code where the car's actual world space position is calculated, we can see here that it happens on this line. This is the car's t that we calculated with the speeds and the accelerations and the decelerations. And then we look in the spline and we get a point dependent on t, and that function will return the actual car's position in world space, and we can use that to draw, which we do here. Just draw a little circle. Eventually we'll replace these circles with proper artwork, but that's for another week. It's the end of the day now on Wednesday, and I'm really pleased because after all this work, you can finally ride a monorail. So I thought I'd give you a quick demo of that before I head home for the day. The way that it currently works, it's pretty simple. There's no UI or anything yet. That's what I want to work on next, is you wait for a car to enter into the station and you press spacebar and he jumps onto the monorail, and the monorail car takes over the camera and you start riding around the world. I worked hard on the camera transition there to make sure the camera doesn't have to stop as it changes rooms. And I've made the camera feel really quite floaty this time because it's meant to be quite a chill ride around the world. The next step is to implement getting off the monorail. I haven't actually implemented that yet, and I also want to build a UI so you can choose if you want to fast travel to a monorail station or you just want to take the monorail and ride around the world to see all the gardens that you will have built. I'm really pleased. It looks really nice. I really like the slow floating camera that the monorail cars use. It's pretty chill. I like it. So that's all the work I'm going to do this week. Kids are on Easter holidays now, so I'm going to spend a bit more time with my family, and I'm not going to have a chance to stream, I don't think, for the next couple of weeks. But I'll still try and work on the game. I'll still try and get videos out. I'll let you know if there are any changes. So that's everything this week. We built the monorail system, or at least the monorail system prototype, and it took 2 attempts, but I'm glad we did it a second time because it's much better now. Next time I want to build out the monorail UI that will allow the player to jump on and off the monorail, and I also want NPCs to be able to use the monorail. So tune in next week and we'll see what progress that I make. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.